Thanks for joining us tonight. A passionate and emotional debate on gun control continues at the state capitol tonight as lawmakers work to pass a historic and far-reaching bill. Right now, the House is still discussing the legislation. Let's get the latest from Fox Connecticut's Tony Terzi. He's been inside House chambers all evening long. Tony.
All right, thanks very much. Yes, the House went into session at about 7:05 this evening, but for 6 hours prior to that, the Senate chamber was occupied with state senators debating on what should or shouldn't be in the bills. There were 7 amendments that failed, and then at about 6:40 this evening, they took the vote. No surprise, the bill passed with ease, and this was after passionate speeches delivered by both Republican and Democratic leadership. Senate Minority Leader John McKinney set out to clarify what, in his opinion, the bill will and won't do.
Many thought the bill required them to annually register all of their guns. It does not. Many thought they were going to be required to purchase liability insurance. They are not. Others thought the bill confiscated their guns or magazines. It does not.
Meantime, Senate President pro tempore Donald Williams says this bill will drastically reduce criminal access to, quote, weapons of war.
This is a new and historic model for the country on an issue that has typically been the most controversial and divisive.
Immediately following Senator Williams' remarks, the Senate passed the bill easily, 26-10. Only 2 Democrats were among the dissenters.
Constituents in my area, a very rural part of Connecticut, where many people own weapons and own them and are legal, law-abiding citizens, I felt that this had too much impact on their everyday usage of those weapons.
Senator Williams referenced a study by Johns Hopkins University, which supports what this bill aims to achieve.
Keeping guns out of the hands of criminals comes down to things that are seemingly as simple as universal background checks, as licensing and ensuring that folks have permits before they purchase firearms.
We've had 63 hours of public hearings. 34 hours alone on gun-related bills. I don't know we've ever had that many hours of public testimony on any one issue in the 14 years that I've served here.
Now, speaking to several members of the House of Representatives as things got revved up just after 7 o'clock, I said, are we looking at midnight, more or less? And they all smiled and shook their heads and said, yeah, we're going to be ordering out dinner. Coming up at the bottom of the hour here on the Fox Connecticut News, we're going to tell you a little bit about a motion to divide and explain what that is and why it was brought up in the House of Representatives tonight. Live outside the state capitol, Tony Terzi, Fox Connecticut.
Here's a breakdown of what the bill calls for and when.
It includes an immediate ban on so-called assault weapons, and current owners of those guns must register them with the state by January of 2014. It also prohibits the sale of large-capacity ammunition magazines, and again, owners of those mags would have to register them by January of 2014.
Universal background checks would apply to sales at gun shows and private sales, and an eligibility certificate would be needed to purchase ammunition and long guns. Finally, a dangerous weapon offender registry would be created, and penalties for gun trafficking would be expanded.
Just say no! Just say no! Just say no!
Before the debate, hundreds of protesters filled the 3rd floor of the Capitol. The bill's opponents drove in from as far away as Stamford, Stratford, and East Haddam to ask lawmakers for a no vote on Senate Bill 1160. Hundreds chanted and held up homemade signs supporting the Second Amendment and making their opposition to the bill clear.
I'm 15 months from retirement. Month 16, we're probably on our way out.
You're going to leave the state?
Absolutely.
Do you think this is going to stop Sandy Hook from happening again? No.
Protesters spent hours outside the Senate chamber, but most left late this afternoon before the Senate passed it.
While the debate rages on, many Connecticut residents are trying to figure out what this means for them, especially true to those who own, manufacture, and sell firearms.
Yeah, Fox Connecticut's Louisa Moeller joins us live at the Capitol with a look at what's next for them.
Yeah, Brent, Allison, we're talking a 138-page bill, which only became available to the public this morning. Fill it with tons of complicated language, and that's why gun owners, manufacturers, and dealers are panicking about how this could affect them, and especially since the proposed ban on new semi-automatic weapons would go into effect as soon as the governor signs the bill.
South Central Oregon. This is from the governor's office of Mississippi. This will be from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Mark Milkowski reviewed letters from nearly a dozen governors. They all want Stag Arms, the manufacturer of the Stag 15 semi-automatic rifle, to move to their state.
It's a decision I don't want to have to make right this second, but it's something that I've considered more so now than I ever have in my entire life.
Moving his New Britain factory and leaving behind roughly 200 employees might not be the first thing Milkowski will worry about in the next few days, but one thing certainly is. If Governor Dannel Malloy signs Bill 1160 into law, Milkowski will not be able to legally sell his style rifle in Connecticut anymore, effective immediately. That's a blow to Stag Arms revenue.
Connecticut makes up about 5% of our sales. This quarter alone, we've sold nearly $1 million worth of guns.
But gun stores like Hoffman's are dealing with issues of their own, like getting rid of merchandise. As soon as the bill becomes law, it's possible the people who have deposits down to buy guns may not be able to pick them up due to the new bans. The owner of Hoffman's told me off camera he doesn't know how he will deal with those customers. And other gun stores say they are scrambling to get the people on their waiting lists authorized by state police in the hopes that the state will honor the sales. The only problem is when we called the state police special licensing and firearm unit, all we got was this. How do you plan to handle that?
We don't know. I've got the bill. I read it. I don't understand it. It's very, very difficult to understand the language in there. And it's going to be very hard for me to open the place tomorrow and know exactly what I can and cannot sell in Connecticut.
Now, as you just heard from Tony, the House is parsing through this bill, and it's going on for hours. So there are plenty of questions and new information will come out with as this continues and as this bill either passes or dies in the House. But a few things you might not know about it. Number one, if the ban on new semi-automatic weapons passes, that excludes use by people in the military as well as law enforcement officers as long as they're on the job. So it's not while they're at home, as long as they're in active duty. Also, if you move into the state of Connecticut with a weapon that is legal in another state but would become illegal here, you would have 90 days to either get rid of it, leave it in another state, sell it to a licensed dealer, or render it unusable. Live outside of the state capitol, Louise Moeller, Fox, Connecticut.